Marcus Thompson had always been the kind of person who used his size to get what he wanted. At 28 years old, he stood 6 feet 3 inches tall, with broad shoulders and arms covered in tattoos that told stories of bar fights and street confrontations. He worked as a bouncer at a rundown club on the wrong side of town, where his reputation for being quick with his fists kept troublemakers away. Marcus grew up in a rough neighborhood where showing weakness meant becoming a target. His father had abandoned the family when Marcus was 12, leaving his mother to work 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. The anger from those early years had never left him, and he channeled it into intimidating others whenever life didn't go his way. On this particular Tuesday evening, Marcus was walking through the city center after finishing his shift at the club. The streets were busy with people heading home from work, street vendors calling out their wares, and the usual urban chaos of honking cars and flashing neon signs. Marcus had been drinking heavily during his break, and the alcohol had sharpened his already volatile temper. He spotted what looked like an easy target near the entrance to the Grand Hotel that catered to wealthy tourists and business travelers. A young man in an elaborate uniform stood at attention by the ornate doors, his posture straight and professional. The uniform was deep blue with gold trim, complete with white gloves and polished black boots that reflected the street lights. Marcus assumed the young man was just another hotel doorman, probably making minimum wage and too scared to stand up to someone like him. What Marcus didn't know was that this wasn't just any hotel employee. The young man was David Chen, a member of the Royal Guard who had been assigned to discreet security duty during a diplomatic visit. David was 25 years old and had served in the military for 7 years before being selected for the prestigious Royal Guard. His training had been intense and comprehensive, covering everything from hand-to-hand combat to diplomatic protocol. Despite his relatively small frame at 5 feet 8 inches, David possessed lightning-fast reflexes and had mastered multiple martial arts disciplines. Marcus approached David with the swagger of someone who had never met his match. He had a habit of picking on people he perceived as weak, especially those in service positions who couldn't fight back without losing their jobs. Over the years, he had terrorized waiters, shop clerks, and security guards, always choosing victims who seemed unlikely to retaliate. The first sign of trouble came when Marcus deliberately bumped into David while pretending to stumble. David maintained his professional composure, stepping aside slightly and offering a polite nod. This calm reaction only fueled Marcus's aggression, as he interpreted it as a sign of weakness rather than disciplined restraint. Marcus began with verbal harassment, making loud comments about David's uniform and questioning whether he was man enough for his job. Passers-by started to notice the commotion, some stopping to watch while others hurried past, not wanting to get involved. David continued to stand at his post, his expression neutral but his eyes alert and calculating. The situation escalated when Marcus grabbed David by the shoulder, spinning him around and demanding that he show proper respect to his betters. David's training kicked in immediately, but his instructions were clear about maintaining diplomatic discretion whenever possible. He tried to diffuse the situation verbally, speaking in calm, measured tones. Marcus interpreted David's restraint as fear and became more aggressive. He pushed David backward against the hotel's glass doors, causing them to rattle loudly. Hotel guests inside began to take notice, and the hotel manager started making his way toward the entrance. David knew that the situation was rapidly approaching the point where he would need to take action to protect himself and maintain order. What Marcus failed to understand was that he wasn't dealing with an ordinary hotel employee who could be intimidated into submission. David's calm demeanor wasn't weakness but rather the confidence that comes from years of rigorous training and real combat experience. Every movement Marcus made was being assessed and catalogued, with David mentally preparing for the moment when words would no longer be sufficient. The crowd that had gathered was growing larger, with people pulling out their phones to record what looked like it might become a physical confrontation. Some onlookers were calling for security, while others seemed eager to see what would happen next. The tension in the air was palpable as Marcus continued his aggressive behavior, unaware that he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. David remained professional even as Marcus's behavior became increasingly threatening. His military training had taught him to assess threats quickly and respond appropriately, but it had also emphasized the importance of using only the minimum force necessary to resolve a situation. He was hoping that Marcus would eventually back down, or that hotel security would arrive to handle the matter through normal channels. However, Marcus had no intention of backing down. His pride was now on the line, in front of all these witnesses, and he felt compelled to follow through on his aggressive posturing. He had built his reputation on being someone who never backed down from a fight, and he wasn't about to start now, especially not with someone he viewed as just a glorified doorman. The moment of truth was rapidly approaching, as Marcus raised his voice even louder, hurling insults and threats while continuing to push and shove David. The hotel manager was now at the door, speaking urgently into his radio, and clearly trying to summon additional help. David knew that he was running out of options for resolving this peacefully. Marcus made the fatal error of assuming that David's restraint meant he was incapable of defending himself. This misunderstanding would prove to be a costly one, as David was simply choosing not to escalate the situation, rather than being unable to do so. The difference between these two things would soon become very clear to Marcus and everyone else watching this confrontation unfold. As the tension reached its peak, Marcus prepared to make a move that would change everything. He had no idea that his next action would transform him from the aggressor into the victim of his own poor judgment. The calm young man in the uniform was about to demonstrate exactly why he had been chosen for one of the most elite security positions in the country. The breaking point came when Marcus decided to escalate from pushing and verbal threats to throwing an actual punch. He pulled back his right fist, confident that his size and strength would easily overwhelm the smaller man in uniform. What happened next would be talked about for weeks by everyone who witnessed it. David saw the punch coming from a mile away. Marcus telegraphed his intention with his body language, his amateur fighting style making his movements predictable to someone with David's training. As the punch sailed toward his face, David moved with the fluid grace of a trained martial artist. Instead of backing away or blocking the punch in a conventional manner, David stepped slightly to his left while simultaneously grabbing Marcus's extended wrist. Using Marcus's own momentum against him, David executed a perfect arm drag that sent the much larger man stumbling forward off balance. Before Marcus could recover, David applied a joint lock that brought Marcus to his knees on the sidewalk. The crowd that had gathered let out a collective gasp of surprise. They had expected to see the smaller hotel employee get knocked down, not witness such a skilled display of self-defense. Phones that had been recording captured every moment of Marcus's humiliation as he found himself suddenly and unexpectedly on the ground. Marcus's shock was evident as he tried to process what had just happened. One moment he had been in complete control of the situation, and the next he was kneeling on concrete with his arm twisted in a position that sent sharp pain shooting up to his shoulder. He attempted to struggle free, but David's grip was like iron, and any movement only increased the discomfort. David's voice remained calm and professional as he spoke. He identified himself properly for the first time, explaining that Marcus was currently being restrained by a member of the Royal Guard, and that continued resistance would only make things worse. The revelation sent murmurs through the crowd, as people began to realize that this wasn't just any hotel employee, but someone with serious authority and training. Marcus's face flushed red with embarrassment and rage as he realized his mistake. He had picked a fight with someone completely out of his league, and now he was paying the price in front of dozens of witnesses. His reputation as a tough guy was crumbling before his eyes, replaced by the image of him being easily controlled by someone half his size. Hotel security arrived just as David was explaining to Marcus why continuing to resist would be inadvisable. The security team was amazed to find their situation already under control, with the aggressor safely restrained and no damage done to the hotel property. They had expected to find a chaotic fight scene, not this display of professional competence. Marcus tried one more time to break free, twisting his body and attempting to use his weight advantage to overpower David. This proved to be another serious error in judgment. David adjusted his grip and applied additional pressure to the joint lock, causing Marcus to cry out in pain and immediately stop struggling. The hotel manager arrived and quickly assessed the situation. He recognized David's uniform and understood immediately that they were dealing with a diplomatic security matter rather than a simple disturbance. He began coordinating with David to ensure that proper protocols were followed and that the incident was handled with appropriate discretion. Police officers arrived on the scene within minutes, having been called by multiple witnesses who had observed the confrontation from the beginning. They were briefed by both the hotel manager and David about what had transpired, with several witnesses confirming that Marcus had been the clear aggressor throughout the entire incident. As Marcus was helped to his feet, still rubbing his sore arm, the full scope of his predicament began to dawn on him. He wasn't just dealing with a simple assault charge or a civil matter. He had attacked a member of the Royal Guard, which carried much more serious legal implications than he had ever imagined possible. The police officers were respectful but firm as they explained to Marcus that he was being arrested for assault on a government official. They read him his rights while David provided a professional statement about the incident, describing Marcus's behavior and the minimal force that had been necessary to control the situation. David's restraint and professionalism throughout the encounter had been exemplary. He had used only the minimum force necessary to protect himself and maintain order, despite having the skills and authority to have done much more. His conduct reflected the high standards expected of someone in his position. The crowd began to disperse as Marcus was placed in handcuffs and led toward a police car. Many people were still recording with their phones, and some were already sharing videos of the incident on social media. The story of the bully who picked the wrong target was beginning to spread beyond just the immediate witnesses. Marcus sat in the back of the police car, his head spinning as he tried to comprehend how quickly his simple bullying attempt had turned into a legal nightmare. He had gone from feeling powerful and in control to being arrested and facing serious charges, all because he had misjudged his target so completely. David returned to his post after giving his statement to the police, resuming his professional stance as if nothing had happened. His uniform was still immaculate, and his composure remained unshaken. The only sign that anything unusual had occurred was the small crowd of hotel guests and passers-by who continued to point and whisper about what they had just witnessed. The hotel manager made sure that David had everything he needed to continue his duties and apologized profusely for the incident. David accepted the apology graciously but emphasized that such situations were simply part of his job and that he had handled much worse during his military service. As news of the incident began to spread through the hotel and onto social media, the story took on a life of its own. Videos of Marcus being taken down by the much smaller Royal Guard were being shared widely, along with commentary about the importance of treating service workers with respect and not judging people by their appearance. Meanwhile, Marcus was being processed at the local police station, where the full weight of his actions was explained to him by the duty sergeant. He learned that assaulting a member of the Royal Guard was not just a simple misdemeanor, but a serious offense that could result in significant jail time and hefty fines. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on anyone involved. Marcus had chosen to bully someone based on the assumption that they were powerless to fight back, only to discover that he had picked arguably one of the most highly trained and capable individuals he could have possibly encountered. His prejudices and assumptions had led him directly into a trap of his own making. As the evening wore on, Marcus found himself in a holding cell, contemplating how drastically his life had changed in just a few minutes. What had started as another routine day of intimidating people he perceived as weak had ended with him facing criminal charges and becoming an internet sensation for all the wrong reasons. The consequences of Marcus's poor decision became clear very quickly. By morning, videos of his encounter with David had gone viral on social media platforms, accumulating millions of views and thousands of comments. The story had been picked up by local news stations and was being discussed on radio shows across the city. Marcus spent the night in jail, unable to make bail until his court appearance the next day. During those long hours in his cell, he had plenty of time to think about how his life had spiraled out of control. The other inmates were quick to point out that they had seen the videos on their phones, adding another layer of humiliation to his already dire situation. His employer at the nightclub received numerous calls from reporters and concerned customers who had seen the viral videos. The club's owner, worried about the negative publicity and potential liability issues, made the decision to terminate Marcus's employment immediately. In a single day, Marcus had lost his job, his reputation, and his freedom. The legal proceedings moved swiftly due to the clear evidence and multiple witnesses to the incident. David's testimony was precise and professional, describing exactly what had occurred without embellishment or personal opinion. The hotel's security cameras had captured portions of the encounter, providing additional evidence of Marcus's aggressive behavior. Marcus's court-appointed lawyer advised him that his best option was to accept a plea bargain rather than fight the charges in court. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and taking the case to trial would likely result in a much harsher sentence. The prosecutor was willing to reduce some of the charges in exchange for a guilty plea and a formal apology. During his sentencing hearing, Marcus was required to stand before the judge and acknowledge his actions. The judge was particularly critical of Marcus's behavior, pointing out that attacking someone in a service position showed a concerning pattern of bullying behavior that needed to be addressed seriously. The sentence included 6 months in county jail, 2 years of probation, community service, anger management classes, and a substantial fine. Additionally, Marcus was required to pay restitution to cover David's time away from his duties and the hotel's costs related to the incident. The financial impact alone would take him years to recover from. The anger management classes proved to be an eye-opening experience for Marcus. For the first time in his adult life, he was forced to examine the root causes of his aggressive behavior and confront the fact that his actions had serious consequences for other people. The counselor helped him understand how his childhood experiences had shaped his need to dominate others. During his time in jail, Marcus had several encounters with people who had seen the viral videos. Some inmates mocked him for being taken down so easily by someone smaller than himself, while others expressed surprise that he had been foolish enough to attack a member of the Royal Guard. These interactions forced him to confront the reality of how his actions appeared to others. The community service portion of his sentence required Marcus to work at a local homeless shelter, where he encountered people from all walks of life who had fallen on hard times. Many of these individuals shared their stories with him, helping him develop empathy for people in difficult situations rather than viewing them as targets for his aggression. David, meanwhile, received commendations from his superiors for his professional handling of the incident. His restraint and skill in managing the situation without causing serious injury to Marcus or damage to property was held up as an example of proper protocol execution. The incident was used in training sessions to demonstrate appropriate use of force. The viral videos had an unexpected positive impact on public awareness about service workers and the challenges they face. Many people commented on social media about the importance of treating all workers with respect, regardless of their position or appearance. The incident sparked conversations about bullying behavior and the assumptions people make about others. Marcus's release from jail marked the beginning of a long journey toward rebuilding his life. Finding employment proved extremely difficult, as potential employers would often recognize his name from the widely publicized incident. He was forced to take minimum-wage jobs in positions similar to those he had once mocked and intimidated. Working in these service positions gave Marcus first-hand experience of what it felt like to be on the receiving end of customer abuse and disrespect. He witnessed other workers being treated poorly by customers and began to understand the daily stress and humiliation that service workers often endure. This perspective shift was crucial to his personal growth. The probation requirements included regular check-ins with a probation officer who monitored Marcus's progress in anger management and community service. These sessions helped ensure that he was making genuine efforts to change his behavior rather than simply going through the motions to satisfy his legal obligations. Over time, Marcus began to develop genuine relationships with his co-workers and the people he met through community service. Many of these individuals had overcome significant challenges in their own lives and served as examples of resilience and personal growth. Their stories inspired Marcus to continue working on himself even when progress felt slow and difficult. The financial consequences of the incident continued to affect Marcus for years. The legal fees, fines, restitution payments, and lost income from better-paying jobs created a burden that took considerable time to overcome. This ongoing reminder helped ensure that the lessons from his encounter with David remained fresh in his mind. One unexpected outcome of the incident was that Marcus eventually became an advocate against bullying behavior. He began speaking at community events about his experience and the importance of treating all people with respect. His first-hand account of how quickly bullying can escalate into serious legal consequences resonated with audiences and helped prevent others from making similar mistakes. David continued his distinguished career with the Royal Guard, earning several additional commendations for his service. He occasionally received updates about Marcus's progress through official channels, and was pleased to learn that the incident had ultimately led to positive changes in Marcus's life, rather than simply punishing him. Years later, when Marcus had completed his probation and rebuilt much of his life, he had the opportunity to apologize to David in person. The meeting was arranged through official channels, and Marcus was able to express genuine remorse for his actions and gratitude for David's professional restraint during their encounter. The incident became a case study in conflict resolution and professional conduct training programs. David's handling of the situation demonstrated how proper training, restraint, and professionalism could transform a potentially violent encounter into a learning opportunity for everyone involved. Marcus's transformation from bully to advocate illustrated the possibility of genuine personal change when consequences are paired with appropriate support and intervention. His story served as a reminder that even people who make serious mistakes can learn from their experiences and become positive contributors to their communities. The viral videos that once brought Marcus shame eventually became tools for education and awareness. He would often reference them in his speaking engagements, using his own humiliation as a way to help others understand the real-world consequences of bullying behavior and the importance of treating all people with dignity and respect. The encounter between Marcus and David ultimately demonstrated that true strength lies not in the ability to intimidate others, but in the wisdom to use power responsibly and the courage to stand up against those who would abuse their advantages over others. It was a lesson that resonated far beyond the immediate participants and continued to influence people long after the initial incident had passed.